Hi, thank you so much for joining me again today. So, my name is Erin, you know that. I am the host of Resilient Voices, Stories of Brave Women, and today we are going to be speaking to Marcy Larson. So, Marcy Larson practices as a general pediatrician in Grand Rapids, Michigan. She is the host of the Losing a Child, Always Andy's Mom podcast, a resource dedicated to providing hope and encouragement to bereaved parents. She also facilitates virtual support groups for grieving parents through Starlight Ministries. Another part of Always Andy's Mom nonprofit's mission is to help educate healthcare staff about grief so they can better care for their grieving patients. Marcy and her husband Eric give presentations to medical professionals. You can connect with Marcy either through her website, Facebook, or Instagram, and I will be sharing all those links in the show notes. So, without further ado, let's get chatting to Marcy. Zoom recording. Okay. So, Marcy, thank you again for joining us today. I really
Oh,
appreciate you being here, your beautiful
I am
smiling face.
delighted. Thank you.
It's always nice to see you and connect. Thank you.
I know. It's great to see you too. I love hearing your voice and seeing your face.
Oh, same. Thank you. All right. So, Marcy, I've read all your intro. Now, can you tell us about Andy and what made Andy so special?
Oh, yes. It's so Andy was my middle child. And honestly, he was a lot the glue that kept the family together. He could do something with his older sister and feel totally comfortable. He could hang out with his younger brother and feel totally comfortable. He just really held us together. I mean, we did a lot of things together as a family. He loved, being a cheerleader. He loved supporting other kids, supporting members of his family. I sing in the church band. And so I'm up in front of the church singing every week, and we would get done and we'd always have to kind of clean up, all our music and the stands and everything. And he would run up to me at the end of church, even when he was like 12, 13-year old, and just give me a huge hug because he just would just to support me. Right. I mean, and he just loved that. He was a wonderful, wonderful teammate. So he loved sports. He, played baseball. He played soccer. He played golf. He did all sorts of sports, but he wasn't really that great at any of them, unfortunately. But it didn't matter because
Yeah.
he really just loved being a member of the team. That was the most important thing to him. And he was everybody biggest cheerleader on their team. I remember right before he died. So he and his best friend were going to different high schools. Andy was going to a small charter school, it was an aviation academy. And so they had a small soccer team. And then his best friend was going to the big high school where he would have gone had he stayed in public school. And so Yoni's trying out for the soccer team. Andy's trying out for the soccer team. And Yoni is nervous, right? Because this is a big high school team and he isn't sure he's going to make it. And Andy was just like, Yoni, of course you're going to make it. You're the best. You're awesome. You're amazing. And he just went on and on and on about how awesome Yoni was. And when Yoni made the team, I think Andy was just as, if not more excited for his best friend to make that team than he was when he made the team.
So
Because
sweet.
he was announced as being on the team about a week before he died. He was named starter. He was named a starting left striker. I still remember the day before he died. He was named starter to that JV team. And it was really funny because I remember thinking, as we prayed together before he tried out. He was so nervous. And, he'd been practicing with the team in the summer and he wasn't really that good. I mean, I told you he wasn't that good at soccer. He was always like the last one off the bench kind of thing. And he was miraculously named starter. And he had told me that he had the best soccer practices of his whole life, right?
Oh,
In these days before his death. And he's named starter. And I thought, oh God, please, when the coach realizes that he's not that good, don't let it break Andy's heart that he won't be able to start anymore. And then, of course, he never did get to start, but he still had that high. It's like I feel like God blessed him
Yeah.
with the best weeks of practice of his whole life so he could get that high, right? He had never, ever made a goal with his left foot, ever. And that's what he was doing in practice. He was making goals with his left foot, and which is why he was named left starting striker. But, that's just the kind of kid he was. And he had a beautiful, amazing voice. He was a head
I
chorister
love
for the
his
Grand
voice.
Rapids Choir
Yeah.
of Men and Boys.
Gives
So,
me
yeah, if
goosies.
anybody who's ever listened to my podcast, if you listen all the way to the very end, you hear Andy singing the last verse to Away in the Manger, which is his last solo that he had on the Christmas concert before he died. And the last verse of Away in the Manger is actually about being in heaven. And the last words are, "And fit us to heaven to live with thee there." And so if you listen to the end, you can hear Andy singing about going to heaven.
Yeah, yeah, and that always gives me goosies. It's so beautiful. I always listen to the end because I do love listening to Andy's voice. He's honestly, it does give me goosies. Just talking about it gives me goosies. Oh, okay. So as a mother, okay, sorry. How did Andy's passing change your perspective of life and resilience?
That's a really good question because it changes everything. I mean, as
Yeah,
you know, it just changes everything. And it's interesting because I mean, I know that I have resilience, but at the time you just feel so incredibly broken.
yeah,
And
yeah,
because I just didn't know how to go on. I just did not know how life was going to keep going with Andy gone. And I actually really bothered me. And it still kind of bothers me when people say you're so strong because first of all, I think there's a difference between strength and resilience. But when people say you're so strong, I think that almost to me, it infers like you're so strong. Well, especially because they say you're so strong, I could never do it. And that just is irritating because I don't really have a choice. I have
yeah,
to do it. I have to
yeah,
get up. I have to keep going. I have to take care of my other kids. I have to get up in the morning. There's not a choice.
yeah,
So in that, you have to have that kind of strength. But really, I feel like we're better if we can kind of be weak together, right?
yeah,
So
yeah,
instead of this independent, like I'm independent, you're so strong, you don't even need me. You're so
mm,
strong. No, we need each other. And that's where I think we can get resilience if you are in community with other
yeah,
people.
yeah,
So you
yeah,
look to others, you get support from others. We've talked, obviously, you and I've been doing support groups together. We've been in, different text groups together, which has been amazing because
yeah,
you get your strength and resilience from others,
yeah,
you
yeah,
know?
yeah,
And I feel like it doesn't all have to come from inside of me when I can get support and feel support from other people.
yeah, yeah. A lot of people lose their faith when,
Yeah.
you know, so I mean, for me, I didn't. I mean, I was just like, my
Yeah.
first words were, thank you, God, that I had Dakota for so long. And I don't know how. I've never felt angry with God. And I know that, but a lot of people do lose their faith and a lot of people do get angry with God. Have you felt that?
I certainly felt anger to God for sure
Yeah,
because it just didn't
yeah,
feel fair. But
yeah.
what I kept telling myself was, and what my pastor would tell me is, it's okay to be angry with God. I mean, Jacob was
Yeah,
angry with God
yeah, yeah,
and Jacob wrestled with God.
yeah,
So, and I kept thinking to myself, as long as I'm still angry with God, that means I'm still in relationship with
yeah.
God.
That's
And
fine.
if I'm still in relationship with God, then I'm okay.
Yeah,
And I don't want to take my anger out of my husband or out of my other kids.
hmm,
If I can take that anger out and just be angry with God, like he can take it.
yeah,
He can take it
yeah,
way more than other family members can take it right now, you
yeah,
know?
yeah, yeah.
So
That's
I
so
did that.
true.
And, I had some friends take me to a class where I would punch a punching bag and all of that kind of stuff to get the anger out. But I felt like I wanted to have healthy ways
Hmm.
to release my anger and not lose my faith. I mean, that's
Yeah.
what brought me to Starlight Ministries for the first time is that we have two groups here in town that are really amazing as
Hmm.
far as grief support for child loss. I mean, and that's very fortunate. I'm in Grand Rapids, Michigan, and we've got wonderful things here. And we were all signed up for this other group. Um, but they were not faith-based.
Mm-hmm.
And I ended up canceling with them and switching to go to Starlight Ministries because I needed the faith part,
Yeah.
because I was
Yeah.
so scared of losing it. I just
Yeah.
was terrified that I would lose my faith. And I remember one day, it was weeks after Andy died. And of course, I was having a lot of trouble sleeping at night. And I woke up in the morning, and it was like church was going to be starting in 15 minutes, or maybe it had already even started. And I completely freaked out to my husband. Like, what did you do? Why did you let me sleep this long? We're going to miss church. We can't miss church, because I was so terrified that if I missed church 1 week, I was never going back. And I did
Mm.
not want to never go back. So it was
Yeah.
a
Yeah.
huge fear for me to
Yeah.
lose my faith. And I haven't. And I certainly feel like, trust has been hard to come back around and all of that. But I feel like I've continued to work on it
Yeah.
and make it important in my life.
Yes. Yeah. Yeah. No, that's good. Okay. And it's, as both a mother and a doctor, how do you manage to navigate the intersection of personal grief and professional responsibility? That must be hard.
It is hard, and that's a great question too, because I actually had to leave my practice for quite some time. So
Mm-hmm.
I Andy died on August 15th, 2018, and I went back to work just a few weeks after. So it's
I
probably
remember.
sometime in September. I don't remember exactly,
Mm-hmm.
but I remember going back in September, and I cried between every patient, and it was awful.
Mm-hmm.
And all my families knew me so well, and they all gave me the look, the, oh, I can't believe your kid is dead look. And they're so sorry, whatever. And I was trying to just stay focused on them. But then I'd go cry, and then I'd have to put the mask back on and go again, and then cry, and then put the mask back on again. And it was too much for me.
Mm-hmm.
And I
Mm-hmm.
ended up having to leave. And I left for the actual practice of seeing patients for about a year before I came back. And what's interesting is that really it was, I mean, I had just kind of an epiphany, and I started doing the podcast, and I started hearing other people's stories, and it changed me as a person. And I
Mm-hmm.
feel like I could then understand compassion in a completely different way that I never could have before. And
Yeah.
it actually made me grow, and it makes me a better doctor today.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
and probably the majority of my patients, well, obviously the ones who have been with me for more than 6 years know Andy. I mean, they know that Andy died, right? It
Mm-hmm.
was a big
Mm-hmm.
deal. Because I was gone for a long time. So they all know. But a lot of my younger families don't know, and they don't have any idea. But sometimes, things will end up coming up. And I certainly feel like my teens, especially that I see with anxiety and depression, it is helpful to them, I think, to know that I understand pain in a way that maybe they think others don't. Right. And
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
I have these little Be Still bracelets that I wear every day. I also have Be Still tattooed on my arm.
Yes.
But I hand these out often at my office in a visit to just remind people to be still and to breathe.
Mm-hmm.
Um, and to just give themselves some compassion and some forgiveness, and to give themselves grace, really.
Yeah. Yeah. That's beautiful. Yeah. That's beautiful. Okay. So what's helped you most in your healing journey?
You know, I think really being in community with others.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
I mean, just 3 weeks after Andy died is when I went to my first Starlight support group. That was amazing. So, so incredibly helpful. So that would have been step one, to be able to
Mm-hmm.
kind of get involved in those communities,
Mm-hmm.
getting a good therapist that I
Yeah.
liked,
Yeah. Yeah.
uh, which isn't always easy to do, I know.
Yes.
And then the last step really was, for me, was starting the podcast.
Mm-hmm.
It gave me an outlet for my grief. It gave
Mm-hmm.
me some purpose for my grief, and it gave me something that I could do with Andy
Yeah.
every single
Yeah.
week.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
I think all of those things are probably pretty equally important in my
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
healing journey,
Yeah.
you know?
Yeah. 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 I'll tell you, for me, it's been yoga. Yoga's helped me
Right.
so much, but also like Mother Mary. You know what? I'm not even Catholic, but I can tell you,
Uh-huh.
I feel, like it made me really, like losing Dakota made me really sit down and think, nobody knows this pain except other moms. And then I thought, Mary, Mother Mary,
Right. I
she
know.
knows, she knows our pain. And so they're like, I don't know, I sort of like think, oh, Mother Mary, help me, God,
Right.
Jesus,
I'm
help me.
I'm I'm with you too. I'm not Catholic either, but it hits you in a totally different way, doesn't
Yeah,
it?
yeah, yeah. You
And
realize,
right. And hearing about Mary and singing songs or hearing stories
yeah,
or
yeah.
whatever about Mary, I just think of her completely differently now.
Yes, same,
Completely.
same. And also, like, and what gives me peace is knowing that Dakota's with Jesus, and that
Yeah.
is like that gives me peace. I know, thank you, God. I know where my daughter is. I don't have to worry about her going out at night anymore or where she
Yeah.
is. I know where she is, and I sort of like say, okay, Mary, give me energy to get through this. Help me, because um she knows the pain. She knows our pain. That's, the yoga, Mary, Jesus. I know, like, it's all energy, and it feels, for me, it feels, that's what's helped me a lot. So, but yeah, I don't know. Community is, I've isolated myself a lot, just the
Mm-hmm.
yoga, and I just, my husband once said to me about, don't you feel lonely? I'm like, no, I talk to Dakota and I talk to God. And, I haven't found that I've needed community as much.
Mm-hmm.
I just felt, but I mean, we're all different. This is what makes us
That's it
beautiful.
exactly. That's it
Yeah, yeah,
exactly.
yeah.
I mean, things that are helpful to you are not helpful to someone else, and
Mhm.
things that are helpful to someone else aren't to you. So
Yeah,
it's
yeah. Our,
completely fine.
our grief
And I
journey is
think
our
that's really
own.
important to remember that
Yeah,
everyone's grief journey is unique.
yeah, that's
We
right.
don't
That's
all
right.
walk through the same steps because we weren't the same people before,
Yeah,
and we're not going to be the same people after.
totally, totally. Yeah, totally.
Mhm.
And that's why I wanted to do the podcast, is because now I'm starting to feel, I want to feel how other moms are feeling. I want to talk to other moms. I want to talk to other women. So
Mhm.
that's why I started the podcast now. Okay. So what advice would you give to other parents facing a similar loss? I know you, because you're going to say community.
Yeah. No, I mean, I think communication first of all.
Yeah.
So I'm actually speaking to a group just next week in
Uh-huh.
Maryland, and that a group of bereaved families, and that will be certainly the big focuses of that are on how everybody's journey is unique and is
Mm-hmm.
their own, and that
Yeah.
you cannot tell from the outside
Yeah.
what someone is going through, that it's all very, very personal. But then for these families, the importance of communicating with each other and
Mm-hmm.
understanding that we all grieve differently.
Yeah.
I've got my dear friend Gwen, who is on the
I love
podcast with me
Gwen.
all the time. You love Gwen, right? Everybody loves Gwen. And she always tells the story of when she went out to see this bereaved couple, and she went to talk to the wife, and the wife was crying and very upset, and of course naturally their son had died, and she was talking to Gwen, and she was so angry with her husband because she said he's not grieving at all he does is stand out there and chop that pile of wood. And that's what he was doing. He was outside chopping this enormous pile of wood in the yard. And Gwen looked at her and she said, that's a really big pile of grief out there,
Mm-hmm.
because that's what he was doing to process his grief.
Yeah.
He couldn't sit in the house and cry with his wife. He
Yeah.
needed to do something. And for him, that activity of chopping that wood really helped him probably have time to kind of process his grief and
Yeah.
think about his grief. She thought he was ignoring it and was doing nothing. That's not what he was doing at all.
Yeah.
And no,
Yeah.
sometimes people do. I
Mm-hmm.
just spoke to a woman not too long ago, and she fully admits she kind of shoved her grief in a box for like 12 years before she
Mm-hmm.
really started
Mm-hmm.
working on it.
Yeah.
Uh, but there are different ways to work on it, and it's not always the same, like we
Yeah.
talked about.
Yeah.
So that
Yeah.
would be my advice, is to not just really communicate with each other and not kind of judge each other,
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
which is easy to want to do because you feel like, well, I'm doing this.
Yeah.
He should be doing this, or she should be
Yeah.
doing this, or they should be doing this. Well, not necessarily, because it's so different for everyone.
Yeah.
Even the same loss, we have with Starlight Ministries, they have kids too, and they sometimes have kids that are in the same group, the same class. They don't have the same story. They both lost their parents, or they both lost the same sibling, or they both lost the same person, but their individual stories of that grief are different.
Yeah.
And that means their healing and what they need is different.
Yeah. Yeah. God made us all individuals, but we all need community. It's so true. So, Marcy, you've written a book, or you're part of a book, please.
Oh, I'm part of a book now.
Okay,
yes, that's coming out really soon. So I don't know when this will air, but the book is being released on March 19th. So, I was asked to be a part of this book by someone that I had on the podcast a few years ago, actually. They were back in on 2021, so quite a few years ago. And the book is called Threads of Gold. So I'm just one of the chapters in the book, but it is about really resilience, kind of like what you're talking about today.
Yeah.
So that Threads of Gold has got a beautiful cover on it about how that threads everything together, that beautiful gold thread, and how we can get through the toughest things. So it's really meant to be for grieving people, for people going through all sorts of different struggles, and kind of having those of us who have been through those struggles tell our stories and how we've been able to kind of move through that and grow even with that. So I love it. I'm very excited about it. I think it's super exciting. You can get it on Amazon. On March 19th, that'll be only $1.99 a copy.
Wow.
And we're trying to sell as many copies as we possibly can that day. And then we'll get print copies out after that. But it'll be really amazing. So I'm looking forward to it.
Yeah, I'm looking forward to it too. I am. All right, well, Marcy, I'm winding up. I'm going to put all your contact details in the show notes. Is there anything else you would like to say before closing?
I feel like I've said it already. It's just, everyone's grief journey is just their personal one, and you can't, you're not doing it wrong. There's no right way to grieve. I guess there are a few really wrong ways to grieve. If you turn towards certain things, that would be wrong ways. But in general, there are many, many right ways to grieve. And, you can do it, and there is light, and it does get easier. And even though the path ahead seems so dark, I just invite you every once in a while to turn around and look and see where you've been, because it turns out you've gone a lot further than you may have think you can.
Yeah, that's beautiful. That's so beautiful. Thank you so much, Marcy.
Absolutely. Thank you.
Nice chatting. Thank you. Bye.